Hello friends, let's make an apple pie. Not just an apple pie, but an apple, pear, fig, and raisin pie. This is an original recipe that I came up with based on a pie recipe by Geoffrey Chaucer, written in the 14th century.
Who's the chef that you know? It's Chef Bill.
Once lived a pie maid, skillful of eye and hand. She made the very finest pies in all of the land.
I am only a poor maiden, but I have all the riches in the world with my wonderful pie.
We're going to start off with a 1/4 cup of raisins soaked in sherry. You can let these sit for a couple hours before you make the pie. I'm going to be using 1 Granny Smith and 2 Honeycrisp apples. The Granny Smiths tend to be tart and mushy. The Honeycrisps will be sweeter and hold their shape better in the pie. I'm also going to be using 2 Bosc Pears for the pie fruit. The rest of the fruit is my soaked raisins in sherry, and I'm going to grab a small handful of dried figs. These don't have to be anything special, just whatever's at the market. So that's it. That is all the fruit that I'm going to be using for my Chaucer pie. To make the crust, let's start with 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of a regular white sugar, I have my unsalted butter. I only need 1/2 cup for that. Put your butter in the freezer for a little bit to make sure that it's super cold and hard. That's important in this step. Put those cubed butter pieces in the flour and mix them with a pastry mixer. If you do not have a pastry mixer, then use a fork or a couple of butter knives. You want to get the mixture dry and crumbly. You do not want to overmix this flour. The pieces of butter should be like little peas in there. So this is the right consistency for the butter and flour mixture. Now I'm going to get a cup of ice water. I'm not going to use the whole thing, but I'm going to drip in a little bit of ice water at a time and then keep mixing my dough. The dough will start to ball up and get clumpy, but you don't want to overwater it. Just enough so that it holds together. Just holds together, and then you're done. Put that lump of dough on your floured board and cut it in half. Now those 2 halves are going to be the top and bottom of the pie. Make flat discs of both of them and put some saran wrap around them. You're going to put them in the refrigerator for a couple hours. You want it to get cold again. Ere the king of the pie maid hath hearest. So he summoned the maid. She came neareth. 'Tis true. This pie is a happy pie. 'Tis the best pie I've ever had. Pie maid, thou shalt stay at my court and make pie for the king every day.
Sir, if you want my pie on your table, you will have to make me the queen. Nay, the empress.
Let's get to work peeling those apples. Cut up the apples in fairly large chunks. We don't have to get real fine. This is great. 1/4 of an inch would be about right. Now, as we mix the apples in a bowl, I'll squeeze lemon juice on top. The lemon juice helps the apples not brown. As I go along here, I'm going to squeeze more and more lemon juice just to make sure that all the pieces are coated. Now I'll destem the figs. I'm going to put those in a little saucepan after I dice them up. I'll add my raisins that have been soaking in sherry. I'm going to put my pan on a low flame. I'm going to add some additional sherry. I'm using a medium dry sherry for this. So only about half a cup more. What I want is the sherry to be absorbed in the fruit. Be careful. Put this on a low flame because at some point it will flame up. The alcohol will burn up. If that happens, just set it aside and give it a little shake. I want to keep cooking the fruit until all of the sherry is reduced and absorbed into the figs and raisins. Back at my apples, I get a tablespoon. I want to add 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour right on top of the apples. Some dark sugar will be great in this recipe. I'm going to put a cup of loosely packed brown sugar over my apples. A little bit of salt. Now, the spices. I like cinnamon, of course, a teaspoon of that. Some nutmeg, a teaspoon of nutmeg as well. Now, a little bit of ground ginger powder, if you have it, a teaspoon of that. And lastly, a teaspoon of pure vanilla. Mush all that together with your hands and make sure that all the pieces of fruit are coated evenly. This will take a little while. They should end up being sort of gooey and mushy, and that's good. That's what you want. Now add your figs and raisins to that and incorporate those into the apple mixture. I have a 9-inch pie pan that I'm going to use. This is a steel 9-inch pie pan, but you could use any pan that you wanted to use that is about 9 inches. I'm going to set my oven for 350. I'm going to put my pan on a baking sheet so that anything that drips off the pie will get caught. Flouring my board, I'm going to put on my cold dough. If you put a little flour on your rolling pin, it will make the rolling out of the dough a little easier. Be gentle with this, use a lot of flour, and slowly form that larger disc of dough. If it cracks or breaks up, that's okay, you can fix that. I'm going to put the dough on the rolling pin very gently and transfer that to my 9-inch pie pan. I'm going to set the corners and repair any damage of that pie crust and then put in the fruit. Now the fruit will be a lot. It'll mound up and it'll look like it might be too much. That's okay. It'll get smaller when it gets cooked down. We're going to have our second disc of dough to form the top. Gently put that on top and use a knife to cut off the excess around the edge. Go ahead and press the edges of the 2 pie crusts together. You don't have to be perfect with this, just gently put it all together. Now, get an egg. I'm going to take the egg yolk only, so I do this little trick where I break the egg and then reserve the yolk in the egg shell. I'm going to dump the egg white out. Now, I just have the yolk. I'm going to add a little milk or cream, about equal amount of yolk to cream. Whisk that up until it is completely homogenized. I have a little brush I use that I like. It's a rubber brush. You could use any pastry brush or even just a spoon and brush on the egg and cream mixture to the top of the pie crust. Make sure it's completely coated. Then I have some coarse sugar. This is some raw sugar, but it has a very coarse grain, so it'll have these big speckles on top. I like that. Using my knife, I'll just make little vent holes. I go in a little star pattern. You could do whatever you'd like with that. Now, the pie goes into the oven. Once it's brown on top, about 30 minutes in, I put just a little bit of foil gently over the pie. This will help it not brown as much. Another half hour, the pie is ready. And that is Geoffrey Chaucer's apple pie. So the maid took the crown, the throne, and the ring. And the maker of pies, 'twas himself, the king.
'Tis true, I, the king, am making pies for the queen, the empress.
The morale of the story is plain to see. Enjoy what thou hast, for nothing is free.